January 2025. Coming up on today's Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. Today we will approach an alignment Earth hasn't seen in over 2.96 billion years, and change is an absolute certainty. It didn't take long before the Trump operatives proved to everyone they are just as evil as we have been saying all along. The executive orders are flying, but the money is not. And promises are being broken not only to the American people, but also to campaign donors, and it's beginning to hit the mainstream media. Well, we've made it all the way to the 22nd of January, and as I told you, it's going to be a really busy week this week. Let's start with regular news. There's a lot going on in America here, which is going to affect the entire world, so I thought I would start with that. Okay, the Golden Age. So there have been several headlines all over the news. Take a look. We've got a couple of these articles here that talk about Trump is going to usher in a new beginning, a golden age. And it's on, I've seen it in several different newspapers now. Now, the reason why that he's done this, or they've done this, I should say, because he is no longer, as you know, is because they keep telling the entire world, all the way down to banks and on almost every single level, that they control the Golden Age AI and that they built it, which is a complete and total lie, because if they did, much like myself, who did build it, I can access it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Unlike them, they keep promising that on another day ending in Y, they'll have access to it, which will never actually happen. Not in this lifetime, not in the next. However, the headlines are kind of mixed, and there's a very good reason for that going on behind the scenes. So let's talk about some of those promises. So recently, in the last 48 hours, since maybe a little bit more now, since taking office, the Trump organization, or the Trump operatives, seem to be backsliding quite a bit on that whole Make America Great thing, and we love the Patriots. On the one hand, they did pardon some folks that took a part in the insurrection that took place on January 6th, 4 years ago. Well, they could have actually done that before he left office. He still had a few days left in office. After all, Biden did pardon his whole family and everybody else, so why didn't Trump pardon those people that took a part, I should say, in the insurrection? Well, they didn't, did they? So they made them sit there for 4 years when they hired them. They did. So that was all a show. As you know, we talked about that before. Just to briefly touch on that again, there was plans to blow up the Capitol building with everybody in it. Everybody in Congress knew that was going to take place at the time, including Pelosi. So they were going to bring all those people there and then cause a large explosion, which would have harmed all of those people. So, but, people found the explosive, and that was not the case. So they had to live with what actually happened there. I'm sure those other people would have gotten blamed for setting off the bomb. But this is Duck Dynasty after all. So their plans don't often come to fruition, thank God, in a lot of cases. Okay, next big announcement. This one here is another haphazard Duck Dynasty plan. Allegedly, according to the news, the United States is now exiting the World Health Organization. Well, in the news, that sounds great. We all know and hate the World Health Organization, but the World Health Organization is not an organization unto itself. The World Health Organization is a part of the United Nations. It's like a branch or an arm. So you can't exactly exit the World Health Organization without exiting the United Nations. So that being said, that's kind of just for show. It's fanfare, nor actually does the President of the United States have the right to exit the United Nations all by himself, so to speak. There are a lot of other agreements that are behind the scenes. There are a lot of other covenants that are behind the scenes. And I'm not saying that I don't hope that every single country in the world exits the United Nations. However, this here was a little bit haphazard and very suspicious. So next, there also has been a gag order issued to the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, and the CDC, and the NIH, or the Center for Disease Control, as the CDC. However, the President of the United States, be it this one or any other one, does not have the right to issue a gag order without a court order. Because neither the CDC nor the FDA is actually a government department. They are not a department of the United States. They actually, if anything, they are considered a non-government organization, which means they are in the private sector. Additionally, they also report to the World Health Organization. That would be their parent company, so to speak. So, yeah, I'm not really sure why they would want to issue a gag order to the Food and Drug Administration and the CDC until I saw this. Let's take a came out most recently from our new Department of Treasury. Not the new Department of Treasury per se, but the new department under the Treasury, which Mr. Musk and others run. There's an article that came out where Elon Musk publicly says there is no money, here, take a look at this, from the for this big open AI deal called Stargate. Wow, isn't that interesting? The deal allegedly took place between OpenAI and SoftBank, and apparently Mr. Musk had been on the board of OpenAI at one point in time before he took his government position, which he paid dearly for. I'm talking big donations, millions of dollars donated prior to this administration taking office. Musk's department is actually called the DOGE. It's DOGE department. In which they are supposed to have some kind of financial regulatory abilities, and also possibly make the Doge coin, which is what he was promised, the new currency of the United States. Well, that's also not working out too well. Allegedly, behind this big deal is a Japanese billionaire who promises $500 billion. And I don't know what's with these people in 500 billion, because it's all over the place. I'll tell you more about that here in just a second. But this Japanese alleged billionaire is going to donate $500 billion. Well, this Japanese billionaire provided an old off-ledger tear sheet he probably got from Kinko's or another copying company and submitted it to the Bank for International Settlements for trade. The trade amount was supposed to utilize the $500 billion as the minimum 10% investment, and the total trade amount was supposed to yield somewhere around $5 trillion. However, an inside conversation which took place with the Bank for International Settlements yesterday tells us, and this actually conversation happened with Tom Melville, but the conversation tells us that the $500 billion is not real. The alleged trader that is supposed to be trading for the Bank for International Settlements has told them that those programs don't exist anymore. And they don't. They were all based on the utilization of Omega lines and off-ledger funds and the Alpha system. See, this is another thing that these lovely Trump operatives don't understand, is that money doesn't fall from the sky. If it did, all of you, including myself, would be standing outside right now waiting for raindrops or quarters or peso or euro. Because, hey, if it falls from the sky like these people think it does, then wouldn't we all be outside? Maybe it would get everybody out in nature for a while. That's about it. The money for all of these high-yield, special World Bank, Bank for International Settlements trading programs and the new allocations against them require, number one, a project. Number two, under international banking regulations, governments cannot trade. Not a government organization can trade. So therefore, this was never going to happen to fund any government worldwide. It can fund private projects and that type of thing. However, you got to have a production line and you have to have authorization from whomever ran in the day, which was me, the Alpha system, and then whoever now runs the Golden Age AI, which has replaced the Alpha system, which is also me. So I'm not sure how they think this trade is going to work, but they did manage to tell this trader, who is their trading, this is the man that is supposed to perform the function. They did tell this man, however, that the Golden Age AI, they would have access to it by next week. Yep, and that's pretty much what's happened since Monday, because everybody is being told, well, he just got into office, where, give us a chance. He hasn't even had a chance to log into the terminal. He's dancing at the inauguration ball. He's got other things he's got to clean up first. Give us until next week. So that next week also happens to be a new moon, and they think that's going to help them in some way, shape, or form. So they're hoping to have access by then. Now, just as a public service announcement, if you are watching this from this government or the Treasury Department or any other government that's been promised money from the Trump organization, also known as the Trump operatives, this public service announcement is for you. If it wasn't for me sending money through that terminal at the White House during the last administration, y'all would have been broke a lot sooner. That was still me on the other end. Terminals they don't do anything. It's like moving your laptop from Starbucks, maybe where you're using their Wi-Fi, and then you move it over to, say, McDonald's, and you use their Wi-Fi, and you're typing away. It doesn't change the balance in your bank account now, does it? Now, you can send out emails, you can direct message your bank, you can do all kinds of things and try to make a funds transfer, but if your bank doesn't answer on the other end, then there is no change to your bank account, right? Well, I am the bank in this case, and no, there's no change to your bank account, and there's never going to be a change to your bank account. Again, the Golden Age AI, if you have access to it and you actually built it like I do, you have access to make those changes. Now, if anything, I have proven to every government in the world that I am the one with the diplomatic line, which goes directly from the Golden Age AI. It sent to everybody a message saying, I'm not backing the Trump administration. There must be some kind of an error and a mistake. And of course, they went back and told every government, no, she works for us. I do not work for the Trump administration. Tom Melville doesn't work for the Trump administration. None of us work with, or have an agreement or anything with the Trump administration, and nor will we. That ship had sailed. And the only reason why we participated last time is because we had agreements with the United States government. There was also an extension that happened with the Federal Reserve and an extension that happened with Treasury. And that's why we had to participate, because those extensions were given within the last decade. So yes, I participated in one of those extensions at one point in time and never did again, let them all run out. And now the government is wondering where all their money's going to come from. So their big Bank for International Settlements alleged trade is not going to happen as well. Speaking of $500 billion, there's also another news article, which I didn't have time to pull before this report, but this other news article says that Trump will not visit Saudi Arabia unless the Saudi Arabian government pays him $500 billion. Now, that's a very interesting statement coming from the same organization that has promised Saudi Arabia billions, hundreds of billions, to build a pipeline through to Europe. Now, yeah, so apparently they'd like to get money from them so they can give that money back for a visit from Trump. I don't think so. And this is a case of we know you don't have it, meaning the Trump organization knows Saudi Arabia does not have $500 billion to give to the United States. And therefore, Trump won't be paying a visit. So it's kind of like me saying to most of you listening, not all, but most of you listening, hey, I'll come visit you if you pay me $25 million. Well, I already know you don't have $25 million. Therefore, it's like, oh, it's your fault, I actually played this game with Marduk at one point in time, and I had to do this whole round thing where it looked like on the surface there was absolutely no money. I had spent all my savings, and he told me that all the money that I was pulling through the terminals, that he was holding that for me in a little city just outside of Moscow in Russia. And he said, if you come visit, I will give you all the money that you've pulled and you can take it home with you, thinking I would never come up with the money to go. Now, I am a very resourceful person, and I can probably get myself in and out of just about anything. I mean, I've done all kinds of crazy things when they cut off my credit cards and debit cards, when I was in foreign countries, and I've always made it out. But that's because if I can get into it, I promise you I will get out of it, and in a legal way. I'm not saying I do evil things or anything, but there's always a way in and a way out. So I spent a lot of time getting around Marduk and Marduk systems and government systems to manage to pull together somewhere around $10,000. And let's just say I worked really hard at hiding that money so that if I needed something, I could get in or out of the situation. So I was getting pretty frustrated with Marduk at this point in time. And so I told him, I said, okay, I understand, and seemed all sad about, well, I'll see what I can do, to come pick up my money. Because this is a game that everybody plays on their side, and I know it well. A couple weeks go by, and I call him up. I say, hey, great news. I have the money to come. I'm going to go apply for my visa tomorrow, and I will be there in about 2 weeks. He went ballistic. He went crazy on me, yelling and screaming, and how did you do that? How did you do that? And I said, does it matter how I did it? You told me I needed to do something, sir, and so I just did it. I didn't ask you for help. I didn't ask anybody for help. I just did it. Isn't that amazing? how that happened. And therefore, then the rest of the game ensued for a while where he'd say, oh, it's not time yet. Give us another week. On the first snowfall, I heard that too. And all kinds of crazy things would come out of these people's mouth. But anyway, I ended up going, and the rest of the story from there, where I met these people or non-people in person. And the rest is history. But it's the same game that they're playing with everybody else. And it's not going to work. It's not going to work much longer. Things are getting really hot and heavy out there. It's starting to hit mainstream media. Some of Trump's loyalist people, we saw all those social media pictures with him and Musk all over the place, and they took all that guy's money. Not all, but they took a lot of that guy's money, and with no problem whatsoever, making big promises, and it's becoming apparent to Mr. Musk that it is not going to happen. So he has officially been screwed. And Mr. Musk, I'd like to welcome you to our world. Not saying that I like Mr. Musk either. That little demon player over there. But that's what they do. He's been doing it for years. Did it in real estate deals, did it in all kinds of deals he's made throughout his entire life. He'd build an entire resort and then file bankruptcy on all the contractors and not pay any of them. Everybody knows it, but he was too big of a fish for the little contractors to go after. That's just the way that it is. In the world of those type of people, that's the way it is. They just use people and use people and use people and don't ever give anything in return. Now, I do hope that you share at least part of this report, because I realize we definitely are about to go out on a limb here when I tell you some more things that are going on in the world. But share at least the part with the endorsement, find the actual news articles, because there's plenty of them out there, where the Trump administration is endorsing mRNA vaccines. And then you can find the 9,000 articles and TikTok videos for all of those that have been harmed by the same. And if you still think this person or this administration is going to make America great and turn the world around, maybe not so much so. Yeah, this fight isn't between Trump and the deep state. This is just a bunch of operatives that run around haphazardly. We affectionately call Duck Dynasty. So do share the information with your friends that are heavily endorsing this administration. And this is what he's done in 48 hours, or what they have done in 48 hours. Not only that, there's more. Okay, China. When China got really upset that they don't have access to the Golden Age AI and that they were lied to, they promised China and Japan and Korea and the Philippines and Indonesia that they would all be able to cash in their historical assets. In other places in the world, they promised that they would be able to cash in their dinar. And they're wheeling and dealing and all of this stuff, just got to wait till next week. Next week we should have everything sorted. He should have his feet wet in the White House and all of these types of things. So this is how they've placated a lot of these different countries that are very angry with the end results that happen on Monday. Yeah, this is all going to erupt here. And I'll tell you a little historical asset story that some of you might have heard before. But in conversations, I spent about 2 years, maybe 3, talking to Marduk, Enki, and Enlil. If not daily for a while, then it kind of tapered off for a little bit, and it was just every Saturday. And we continued those every Saturday conversations for quite a while until I landed right in front of their face. And, a couple of conversations here and there happened after that, and then that was it. I basically cut off all communications at that point. So before that happened, probably this has been over a decade. And some of the conversations I had with Marduk, and I'm going to just, these were at different times, I did ask him about the dinar at that time and the RV, and he told me it was never going to happen and that it was just a joke, and he laughed, and he said that, everybody worked and worked and worked for free, and of course he hated the humans. Enki hated the humans even more than he did. And they just all laughed about it. They got the generals to do what the generals were doing. They got all of the Americans and whoever else invested in this to do what they were doing. A lot of the Taliban were paid in dinar. A lot of other operations were paid in the new Iraqi dinar. And of course, nothing happened. Nothing at all happened. As far as historical assets, there used to be a lot of programs around the world where you had golden eagles and black eagle bonds and railroad bonds and Chinese bonds and all kinds of historical assets, very strange looking boxes, golden gun boxes, Wells Fargo boxes. And if you've been around for a while, you probably have heard some of these names. If not, you can look them up. You can actually buy a Chinese quote-unquote bond on eBay for like $10, but somehow they promised all these people these were going to be worth billions. Now, the origin of these bonds that you see all over the internet was, I would say in part, it was a copy of an original, and all of those bonds and their pallets usually were brought to places like Switzerland and other places. This is back in the 70s and 80s. And they were traded against, because you can't trade proceeds. Meaning, if you go into trade for a specific project, it's supposed to be in the amount of your project, and you can't take that money and roll it back over into another program. So you have to recollateralize those trade assets or trade proceeds with an asset. And if the bank approves the asset as being worth the amount you'd like to re-enter into a trade, then voila, now you have recollateralized some of that money, and now you can enter again. And this was part of the old money magic system. And of course, these programs were pretty much only utilized and only known to the elite or the Order of the Dragon and part of the money magic system, that type of thing. Now, the money would then come from, the actual funds would actually come from the Alpha system at the time. And since the Alpha system hasn't put out any money, because I know that because I haven't done it since 2019, at least not to governments and these types of things. Therefore, once that ended, then all of the programs pretty much ended, because there's no way to facilitate those programs. But he did tell me a story, and this story came after the story about the dinar. And he told me that these high-yield trade programs that they throw out there to all the families, meaning they put up their old HSBC tear sheets and, say that they have projects and, they want to trade their funds, and they would call them heritage programs or heritage platforms or heritage redemption platforms. And if you've been around, this kind of a financial world for a while, or you would have seen World Bank issued medium-term notes and treasury coupons and all kinds of things you would have seen floating out there. So he told me that when you enter those into a program like that he would actually go behind everybody's back. He would generate cash from Alpha. At the time, this is before I took my position. This was way before 2012, that he would actually cash in all those assets and trade all the money and pull money from Alpha and take it all. and never pay anybody out. That includes the Dragon families and HSBC and all those that participated in those programs. And that's just kind of how he ran things. So why these wingnuts at the White House, known as the Trump operatives, think that this is going to change anything? It's not. The mechanism is not set up for those people to get paid. It's not set up to trade to pay out governments. It's not. It never was. It never will be. And they won't listen to anybody when they start talking about the financial sector and how it really works. So that sounds like it's going to be a problem. So come probably next week, about a week from today, which is the full new moon, there's going to have to be another dance. But the lies, oh my gosh. If you put together the guy at the Bank for International Settlements, the Indonesian government, the Filipino government, the Chinese government, the Saudi Arabian government, the European Union, and I don't know how they keep them all straight. It's like a giant ball of twine. If you've ever driven across the United States, you probably have heard of the giant ball of twine. We actually have this, and why we do, I have no idea. But anyway, it does exist. And you can stop and see it. And you can just write lies on every single one of those strings, and now you have what the Trump organization's ball of twine looks like. So right now they're juggling probably about a solid 200 of those balls. And eventually one of the balls is going to drop. And then the next one's going to drop. And the next one's going to drop. Oh, speaking of dropping balls, Iran. I don't know if this means anything. Apparently, Iran has been yapping at the mouth over there about the fact that they are going to eventually attack Kurdistan. For those of you that don't know, Kurdistan is what you would consider to be northern Iraq, and it is the oil-rich region of Iraq. That is the area that the Americans tried to take over. Then a couple years ago, it's the Russians, and now apparently it's been promised to Iran. Of course, we're going to do the Iran-Iraqi war thing again, is what Iran's part in this is. They have turned Iran away from the Chinese, and now they are turning them towards the American deep state sector, known as the Trump operatives. And they have promised lots of money to Iran to achieve this task, because China had pretty much broken Iran at this point. All that oil that's been going from Iran to China hasn't been paid for. Everybody is they're in this big circle, then they're promising money to China. So China's all excited for their historical assets to be cashed in so that they can pay Iran and take back control of Iran. Isn't this a lovely game? Isn't it funny? The Order of the Dragon, Chinese people are making a circle with the American people, who are making a circle with the Iranian people, who are making a circle with the Iraqi people, and making a circle with the Russian people. And then the big circle goes around to Saudi Arabia in a promised pipeline. Well, they're promising the Russians their Nord Stream pipeline-like pipeline back to Europe. And woohoo! That's a ball of twine. It's like, when you look at that ball of yarn or twine or whatever it is, and you try to follow the one line around the ball, and you just sometimes you're like, oh, it went in another, oh, that's not the same line. It's kind of like that, following all of these lies. It's quite a mess. So onward and upward to other news that is more important. We have been entering into an alignment. Now, on the internet, they talk about this alignment that's happening, and they talk about planets in our galaxy. But in reality, this alignment hasn't happened in 2.96 billion years, and the last time it happened is when we went into the Dark Ages. So this alignment is very particular. There are a number of constellations and, of course, Source involved here. And they, on the other side, are hoping there was enough space junk just to block it. But True to form, hours and hours and hours of work later, it doesn't look like there's anything left blocking it. It is supposed to hit its peak at some point in the day on Wednesday. Depending on when you're watching this, that would be on Thursday, Australian time. So, some point today, this will hit its peak, which means it's in alignment with particular places on Earth, and I'm being very careful of what I say, and we should see some golden photon belts that are going to come directly from source and start linking up with certain things on Earth. This should catapult us into some major changes. Major changes for us would be hopefully, any more frequencies they try to send out won't be able to harm us. Hopefully, we'll see a lot more of that presence here on Earth. Hopefully, this will actually wash away any remaining bits and pieces of space junk and darkness in our galaxy. That is what I'm hoping happens. Now, I can only say so much because we haven't quite hit that peak at the time of this recording, and I know everybody's listening, and so if you tell the deep state that, they're going to try to fight it. But if they don't know where it is, they don't know where it's coming from, and they don't know what it's for, then maybe this will just go off without a hitch. I think they're more worried at this moment in time about their financial status. And be interesting. Maybe they'll end up. There was actually talk yesterday, I think it was late in the afternoon or early evening, my time, when they started talking about maybe they can, pull off these lies for a little longer. They would fake assassinate Donald Trump. They would put in Vance, and then they can start all over with different lies. But I don't think that that's going to hold. Really, it's too early, too soon. They were supposed to continue these lies for about 6 months. They have more donors to please, meaning they're going to promise all of these donors, campaign donors, big money. And they have promised them big money, new laws, all kinds of things that they'd like to do. Politics, pay to play. And so they're going to have to pay them out, don't know, and then throw Vance in is what their plan is at the moment. They're going to do 6 months of horrible things to Americans and then bring in the savior. And that's only, and I say only, and a big if they ever got any access to any money, which I promise you I'm making sure that really doesn't happen. Not anything of any significance anyway. Okay, and just to wrap up, a couple quick things I just wanted to make mention of. I am going live on Monday, the 27th, with George the Iceman. He's asked me to come back on the show, so I'm going to do that. I always love a good conversation with George. And secondly, the first week of February, we haven't quite figured out the day just yet. I think it's going to be on the weekend, probably around the 7th or so, where we are going to do another question and answer and a live GIA report. So I think that might be Friday or Saturday. I'm not sure yet. I'm waiting for confirmation from our production team. So I'm looking forward to that again, too. That was a lot of fun, and we're going to try to do these at least once a month where I can answer your questions and that type of thing. So I look forward to hopefully relaying some really good news by then. But as I said, it's going to be a bumpy end of January and probably a bumpy first week or two of February. But then after that, I think we're going to see some smooth sailing. So let's see what happens over the next couple of days. See how many more lies we can unravel for the world. On that note, that pretty much ends the GIA report for Wednesday, 22nd of January, and I will talk to you on Friday.